4th Street.
Cape Coral.
Yep, here it is. Yeah, it made it. Yeah, both of them did.
Okay, good. And you
Cape
said there
Coral
was
didn't pick up. Both of those I called today, they didn't answer. Friday though, I don't know if you heard me say this on in the chat. Just for everybody, Friday my team's going to give you guys updates, and then I'm still working on automations. It's not fun with the CRM we got, but until then, just expect a text every single Friday on every lead that you guys sent him. So that's kind of where we're at. Alrighty. Any other questions you guys got? No? Feeling good? Alrighty, let's do some underwriting. So we'll kind of just go like right back to the basics. Now, there's a few different ways to underwrite deals. This first way that I'm going to share with you guys, this is going to be for a deal with no interest on it. And specifically seller finance. Now, this way we're going to underwrite the deal. You could actually use this for subject to, or when subject to is in the mix, I guess. So it's a hybrid deal, seller finance with sub to, or 100% seller finance. This approach is going to work. Some of you guys might want to get a notebook out. This is going to be quite a bit of information, I think. So let's start with the purchase price of a house. All right.
Really gotta change this IP address, big boss.
Hey, stop.
I don't want to say anything so we can get him. I got him. Guy's too much, man. Too much. All right, let's get back to it. Jason, maybe you could help me with that.
Yeah, I got you.
All righty. Let's see if we can do this. Let's just all try and avoid touching the screen so it doesn't draw on it. Let's go.
Shit, I'm sorry.
All good, all good. All right, so let's say we came across this house. Purchase price is going to be $100,000. So yeah, seller, I can't do $100,000 cash, but would you be open to doing some seller finance if I paid you the $100,000? We're just going to do payments. Yeah, I'd be open to that. Awesome, cool. Do you have a mortgage on it? No. Okay, cool. And so we know. Geez, hold on one sec. Google Voice is going nuts. All right, so when there's no mortgage, then it's always going to be this approach. So when it comes to coming up with the offer, that's really what we're getting at, right? So I guess there's. Let me just mute everybody. Here we go. So when it comes to underwriting, kind of like two different angles I'd like to look at it. So one is going to be me kind of underwriting the deal so it fits my buy box. It comes up with an offer and numbers that are suitable for me. But then you also have a different approach of underwriting a deal, and that's more like analyzing the actual deal, the performance of the deal, and us seeing like what is the actual result. What's the cash on cash, what's the cap rate, stuff like that. So this approach, this is us coming up with an offer for seller finance to see if it's a good deal. Can we make sense of it? What can we do? So to really try and dumb this down, try and really simplify it, there's really only two things to figure out. So one is going to be the payment. What can we pay our seller every single month that allows us to cash flow? And then we have the balloon. How long do we need to pay this person off? Right. For those of you guys not familiar with the balloon, that's just how long we have. So if I say, seller, we could do a 10-year balloon, then I have the option to make payments up to 10 years. And at that 10-year mark, I have to pay them in full for whatever's still owed. Any questions with the payment or the balloon before we go deeper? Somewhat straightforward, right? Question?
Hey, Eric. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. It's not a question about this. Just real quick. The seller, for the one that you called today at 120 Salem. I just messaged him and he said he was going to call you back, but I told him that you were in a meeting. So, can I text him a time to give you a call back?
Ask him when he'd be free tomorrow, because as soon as this ends, I got another Zoom till 7.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah. Can you repeat what I said? Yeah, I got you. So, Daniel, the balloon again, guys, is just how long we have, right? So that's not going to be like a fixed thing. We're going to come up with the balloon. So what we're going to be coming up with the payment over here, and we're going to come up with how long we need. So if I say, or let me say this, think of like most loans today. You go and get a loan for a house to live in, FHA, conventional, like you're making a payment until it's paid in full. So there is no balloon. A balloon is just, you're going to owe all the money before you've paid it off in full. So if I say, seller, I could do an 8-year balloon, I could do a 10-year balloon. If I say 10-year balloon, I get to make payments throughout those 10 years, and I have up until that 10-year mark to pay the seller in full. So if I have let's just stay here just for a quick second. If I got a 10-year balloon, I got the deal, cool, 10 years to pay this thing off. Well, if I got a lot of equity, there's nothing stopping me from the next day turning around, listing it for top dollar and selling it, right? So within that 10 years, I'm not locked in. I could refinance it, I could sell it, I could do whatever I want. It's my house, within that time period. But within that time period or up to that last day, you have to pay them off in full within that period, if that makes sense. So seller, I'll do a 5-year balloon. I got 5 years to pay them off in full. Any other questions on that? You determine it yourself. Yeah, like Jason's saying. Yep. Always shoot for longer. The longer the balloon, the better. So I always try and shoot for at least 10 years. That's kind of my sweet spot. I tend to not go below 6 in most cases. That's just kind of my rule of thumb. The last thing you want is to scoop up a deal and say I got like a 3-year balloon and I'm buying it at top dollar. Well, I mean, what happens if something happens, the market turns, and then I'm negative equity within those 3 years? Now I'm in a bad spot. So if you do like a minimum of 6, you can kind of give yourself a little bit of room to breathe. And then within 10, you could definitely ride a wave and come out on top. So the longer the better. All right, so 2 things to figure out: what can we pay the seller, and how long do we actually need to pay them off? I'm just going to mute everybody again. All right. So when it comes to figuring out the payment, what I like to do, there's a few different approaches, but to keep it simple, I like to just reverse engineer the math to determine what could I pay the seller, right? So where it kind of starts, we're going to figure this out. It starts with what can the house actually rent for? If the house is already occupied, you could use that number. So yeah, we got a tenant, they pay $1,000 a month. All right. So if I determine that's market value, then I'll slap that number in. So whatever market value is for rent, plug it in. Pretty simple. So let's say we determine the rent's going to be somewhere around $2,000 a month. For those of you guys not sure how to determine the rent value, you have rent-o-meter. So that's just rent, the letter O, meter, rent-o-meter, and you just put in the address, put in the bed, square footage. It'll spit out, comps, what they think the average rent is.
Or Rentcast.
Yeah, all right. I didn't even know that one. So that's another one. Bunch of platforms out there. That's cool to do. What I do is like my preference to be like 110 with my number. I like to.
Oh, hey.
Man, I like to really interrupt it a lot today. What I like to do is I like to run it through Rent-O-Meter. Then I'll go on Zillow and look at the rent estimate because it tends to be very similar. And then I'll look at actual comps. So just how we, try and come up with after repair values on Zillow, I'll do the same thing. I'll put it on the for rent. I'll give a little bit of a range for the square footage. And then I'm just looking at similar homes, but they also need to be similar in condition too, right? So similar style, similar size, bed count. And all that. I'll just what are people asking for rent in the area, right? And then between the actual homes listed for rent, you could also go on Facebook, right? Facebook for rent, look at homes there too. So between that, the Zestimate, Rent-O-Meter, most of the time I'm pretty confident. And then once you start like picking up rentals, then you'll just know. You'll be like, I could probably get like $1,800 for that, But in the beginning, I would start by by touching all three of those points when determining the rent value. I would also do that too when a property's even rented. So yeah, I got a tenant in there. They're paying $1,000 a month. All right, cool. I'm going to go do my own homework because maybe I can get 1,600 and then I could play the numbers off of that, which allow me to maybe pay a lot more, monthly for the deal. Or maybe I can go into the deal and it makes no money for me. So the seller's still making the same amount of money, but I know that I could jack the rent soon here. And then boom, I can create the cash flow. Right. So it's just important to know, for many reasons, what can we actually rent this house for? All right, let's get back to the math. So we determined the rent, right? We're right now trying to figure out what can I pay my seller monthly. So it starts with the rent, and now we're just going to reverse engineer the math. So we're starting with the rent, and what we're doing is subtracting any and all expenses, and what's going to be left is what we could actually pay our seller monthly. Right? Do you kind of see where we're going with this? So it starts with the rent minus all expenses. Expenses being what? First off would be taxes. Let's say we spoke to them. Taxes, it's going to come out to $200 a month. They say the insurance, that's going to come out to $150 a month. All right, cool. Other expenses, right? So another one is going to be what's called your capital expenditures, CapEx. If you guys don't know this stuff, I write it all down. CapEx is going to be any major expense that hits in the future. So there's going to be stuff like the roof. Like, we're going to have to do a new roof. Maybe inside it's going to need some major updates pretty soon. Maybe the HVAC, the furnace, that's coming due soon here too. Now, the rule of thumb, write this down. It's two different numbers, right? So I play between 10 and 20% of the rent value. That's what I'm going to factor in for the monetary figure, right? So if I plug in 10% for CapEx, then that's 10% of 2,000. So that's $200 I'm taking out, right? If it's 20% I'm factoring in, then $400. So the percentages always are based off of the rent, right? The monthly rent. Now, the rule with capital expenditures, the 10 to 20%, fluctuating in that realm, what it's going to boil down to is the condition of the property and how soon we think these items will appear, right? How soon it's going to be till it needs a new roof. So if it needs less repairs, I'm looking at a house and I'm like, they did a new roof, a new HVAC. Maybe it was built in 22, 21. Everything's got a lot of life left on it. So I'm cool. Like if it's a new home, I could probably maybe go lower between 5 and 10%. If a house is more beat up, like, the roof, it's got maybe 3 years left on it. The HVAC, that's like the original from the early 2000s. If we see these bigger items will come due soon, then I'm going to play closer to 20, if not, exactly at 20% for capital expenditures. So let's say this property's in good shape. We see there's life left on some of these things. So I'm going to factor in 10% for CapEx. That's just going to be $200. Before we keep going, does anybody, have any questions so far? And if I'm going too fast or you need me to run it back, just say it. There's no stupid questions. This took me a little while to wrap my head around. We feeling good? All righty. Next thing we're going to be taking out is going to be the vacancy. Vacancy is always going to be at a standard of 10%. I don't care if they're like, the building's 95% occupied. It's only had a 5% vacancy the past year and a half. I don't care. Just always plug in 10%. That has to be firm. Don't flex on that at all. So always got to be 10% for vacancy. That's going to be an additional $200 coming out. Now, what I do want to say here too is if I was, say I was looking at a multifamily, and by the way, this underwriting style, this approach, this works for multifamily too. It's the exact same thing, except the only difference is you're totaling up all the rents, right? And there's probably other expenses. So just keep that in mind too. But just erase that. There we go. So you got your CapEx, you got your vacancy, and like I said, it's going to be any expense tied to the property. So anything else to test you guys, anything else that could be plugged in here. Jason saying management, that is one, right? So I self-manage. We're pretending this is single. I self-manage. If you're going to hire a property manager, then you're going to factor in another 10%. That tends to be standard across most markets, if not all. So management could definitely be another expense plugged in. Any other guesses? What else could get plugged in here? There's 36 of you guys. I know you guys got something. Landlord utilities. There we go, Xander. Yeah, so now this is something to pay attention to too. So most single families, you're not going to be paying the utilities on. It's almost, I mean, all single families. If it's just a single, that's going to get pushed on the tenant. But now, if we're looking at maybe a duplex or larger, really 2 units or more, that is when you could start to find what's called like an owner's meter. So that would just be like I had a 3-unit building and I had a hallway, a common area hallway amongst all the tenants. And I paid that light bulb, that electric bill for that hallway light and the outside light and the parking lot lights, stuff like that. So small multis and scaling up, you're going to find stuff like that where owners are paying, electric too. So stuff like that, utilities could get plugged in. On the single family, sometimes maybe there's a tenant in there and the landlord's the one paying the water, sewer, trash, or maybe 1 or 2 of those things. Like in the Lehigh Valley, it's real common for the landlord to pay the sewer, or I'm sorry, the trash. And then the tenants would pay the other 2. So that would be another thing, right? Another piece could be like an HOA. Like maybe it's annually, right? Oh yeah, it's $100 a month or whatever the case is. That's going to get factored into. And then basic maintenance, yeah, you could factor that into. This will be another convo, but I always try and push almost all the maintenance on the tenants to save quite a bit. But yeah, you can factor in a little bit for that too. Probably anywhere between like 5 and 10% for turnover. I don't go too crazy on that number though, because you are calculating vacancy and you are factoring in CapEx. So like one thing to keep in mind is like, all right, we put away $200 a month right here for stuff that's going to come in the future, but that stuff you might not actually get hit with. I might do a deal and I'm like, the roof's kind of bad. Maybe it's got 5 years left, but maybe I sell it in year 2 or 3 and I avoid that whole expense. So that 200 just turned back into profit. Right, so you can play with the maintenance a little bit because you got the vacancy and the CapEx. You don't have to go crazy on maintenance. All right, any questions, I guess, so far? Is this all making sense? Jason said HOA trash, yeah. So now this is it, right? So this math spits out what we could pay our seller. So let's do the math. You guys let me know what you guys come up with. Oh, you know what? Hold on, guys. What are we doing? What am I doing? One other thing we forgot to factor in. That's going to be our profit. So on at a minimum, we want to try and shoot for $500 when we're first presenting our offer. On a typical single family, normally my rule is like $350 and less. I want to see $500 a month. So that's just going to be another thing we're going to take out. $500 a month for us, and then what is left over is what we could actually pay the seller. So let me know what you guys come up with. Jason saying 750. Any other guesses? Anybody got a different number? 750. That's what it is. Yep. All right. So the payment is 750. So just another way to phrase this, right? So if we pay our seller $750 a month, we pay all the expenses. As long as we can rent it for $2,000, then we make our $500. So like really what we're doing is we're coming up with an offer that allows us to make money. Right. It's an offer. We're coming up, formulating an offer based on what we need in a deal to make sense of it. So we just figured out our payment. The payment's $750 a month. Cool. Oops, that was the balloon. 750 a month. Then we got the balloon. With the payment, anybody have any questions on this? Anybody lost, confused? There's no stupid questions.
Yeah, Eric, it's Anthony. So what happens if you run into that scenario where you only paid them like $100 to $200 or something like that, something very low?
Yeah, you will run into that situation. You end up in that situation more times than not with the hybrid deal. So we got to pay an existing mortgage and then make a payment to them too. That tends to be where either there you're going to find that a lot, end up in that situation, or where or if you're in like a rental market where the rents are just extremely low. Like it's rented for $750, and that's kind of where the rule can kind of change a little bit, so maybe I'm okay with only making $150 or $200 a month, instead of $5, and that allows me to pay more. Or maybe I could take more of a gamble and not factor in a full 20% or 10% for CapEx. Maybe I can kill that. So one thing to keep in mind is this is proper underwriting. So 90%, at least 90% of people in real estate, they have no clue how to truly underwrite a deal. You'll have an agent say, oh, this is an amazing deal. It makes $500 a month. And then when you actually underwrite the deal, you're like, dude, it doesn't make a penny. You're like, what are you talking about? So it's really important that you follow these to a T. But when you're making your own investment, you can gamble a little bit, so and that's something to think about. I did a lot of real estate gambling when I started scooping up these rentals. I know how to underwrite these deals, so I'm scooping them up like, it makes $300 a month. And then you come to learn about vacancy, CapEx, and you're like, bro, like that was like a wash, or I made close to nothing on that. So I learned the hard way through that to a degree. But what I want to say is, or the point I'm trying to make is, you can take a gamble on some of these deals. So there's been deals that I've done where there's no cash flow, or maybe I'm losing money off rip. Like, I'll buy the deal knowing I'm going to lose $300, $400, $500 a month every single month for a little bit of time. And the reason I would do those types of deals is because I know I could increase the rent, so the first deal that comes to mind is the one of my bigger deals, right? So commercial, multifamily mixed. And the only way we could really get that seller to do that deal was to pay him $5,000 a month. And so we said, all right, yeah, Scott, we'll pay you $5,000 a month. We'll pay the tax, insurance, and everything else on top of that. And that property was only making maybe like $5,000 a month, maybe something like that, maybe 5 or 6. But it was a wash. It was literally a loss off rip, on paper when we first bought it. But the reason we were willing to do the deal is because we were able to identify Scott's got all the rents way below market rent. Like, dude, he's renting it out for $750. That's $1,600 all day long. Like way below what these units should actually have been going for. And so that's how I can make sense of it. I'll do this deal now, knowing it doesn't cash flow, knowing that I'm going to be able to increase the rents over time. There's also been other situations that I'll make sense to do in a deal with no cash flow. That's maybe a little different, bad example, because we could create the cash flow. But there's been quite a few deals I've done that it's impossible. Like, it's at max market rent, and I'm going to make maybe $100, maybe nothing on it. And the way I'm making sense of the deal is because I'm looking at it as an equity play. Like, I either got equity, off rip on the property. So like, I can turn around and sell it tomorrow if I really wanted to. Or I just know that equity is going to build, so, hey, I got 20,000 off rip in equity. If I could hold it for a year and just break even for the next 12 months, then I could probably make 40 in a year from now. So that's the other way I'll kind of justify doing a deal that doesn't cash flow. Just look at it as, an equity play, really. Any questions there? Is that all making sense? So we got the payment, $750 a month. Now it's time to figure out the balloon. How long do we actually need? So let's get all this out of here. All right, cool. Now, when it comes to the balloon, this is kind of like plug and play. So like I said in the beginning of this Zoom, The balloons, we always want to shoot for like 8 to 10 years, if not longer, right? So normally what I'll start with is, again, either 8 or 10. I'll kind of base that on like the vibe I'm getting from the seller. If I am like, yo, they're not going to do this forever, then I'll maybe just jump to 8. If I think there's maybe a shot they'll go long, I'll go 10. So we don't know if it works until we plug it in. So really what it's going to boil down to is you plug in a number and then we test it out. We're really looking to find what is the balance at the end of the 10 years. That's the goal. So I don't know if 10 years works. Let's see what our balance would be at the end of the 10. So now remember, these deals have no interest on them when we underwrite this way. There's no interest. So this $750 a month payment, this is coming off of the $100,000 every single month for the course of 10 years. So all I'm really going to do is I'm going to put $750 in the calculator, and I just want to know how much have I paid them over 10 years. So $750 times 12 months is $9,000 a year in payments times 10 years. Oops. That's 90,000, right? Just basic math. Yeah. Duh. So 90,000 got paid off of my 100, meaning I owe them how much? I paid off 90, bought it for 100. How much do I owe them? 10. Exactly. So now what it comes down to is I kind of look at this as like, I call it like a gamble. Like, is it worth doing this or not? Right. So, or like you're kind of like betting, right, on the property value at that point. So if I owe my seller, this is how I phrase it and ask myself this. If I owe my seller $10,000 in 10 years from now, will that property be worth more than that at that time? It's worth $100,000 today. In 10 years, will it be worth at least 10 grand? Obviously, yes. Right. So that's a freaking steal. Great deal. I'll do that all day long. Now, kind of my rule of thumb is I want to see probably around 40,000 in equity, and relatively quick, within the first couple of years, I would like to see at least 40 grand in equity, and at minimum throughout the whole balloon. So if it's an 8 to 10 year balloon, I need at least 40. And again, that's just based off of that rule of homes at 350 or less is kind of what I'm looking for. If I can't find 40 in equity, then it's just not even worth the time. Not worth the effort. So that's really what it comes down to. Now let's run a different scenario real quick. Let's say we spoke to a seller. Eric, 10 is way too long, dude. The longest I'll go is 3 years. I'm not going any longer than that. All right. So now I gotta see how much have I paid the seller over the course of 3 years and how much do I owe him at that 3 year mark. So same math, $750 a month times 12 months. That's $9,000 a year times 3 years, $27,000 I've paid off of my 100,000, which is what, 73. I'm so off today. 73, right? Yeah. So I would owe him 73,000 at that 3 year mark. So I ain't really hit my equity goal. I want to see at least 40, like I said. This is also, though, other perspective, this is a lot shorter, right? So if it was longer, I'd be at that rate of making 40, to make, what was the number, 20 something, 27,000. So to make 27,000 or accumulate 27,000 in equity over 3 years, is it worth doing that? Is that too much of a gamble? For me, with where the real estate's kind of headed, I think things are going to get good, relatively good again, not tank, hopefully not soon. So that's a gamble I would take. All right, it's worth 100 today. I got no equity off rip, but I'm 100% cash on cash return. I make $500 a month off of this deal, and I get 27,000 in equity in the course of just 3 years. So yeah, I'll take that deal. And the other way to maybe phrase this, to look at this, is the only way I would lose on this deal is if the property lost nearly 30,000 in equity over 3 years. So it's worth 100 today. Do I think it's going to lose 30,000 in equity over 3 years? I don't think so. I'll take the gamble for 500 a month and 27K. The other thing to keep in mind is that's also without appreciation. I think the market's going to go up. What if the property, appreciates and it goes all the way up to 120 or 130 at that 3 year mark? Well, boom, now I got 60,000 off of that. I made 500 a month off of 3 years, 500 a month, 12 months, 3 years. That's 18,000 in cash flow, 27,000 in guaranteed equity, and then appreciation on top of that. That's like almost 70, 80,000 off of one deal. I'll take the gamble. Sure, I'll do it. You know, so that's kind of what it comes down to, like your risk tolerance. Right now, not every deal is going to be risky. You know, what if my payment was a lot higher and my balance is only 60,000 at 3 years? Well, now I only got 40,000, and now I got 40,000 in equity. That's just perfect. I like that. That sounds great. Let's do that. Another thing too, I know I'm kind of rambling a lot, but a lot of this can get tweaked to meet it, right? So say you're like, the risk tolerance, it's just not there. You're like, dude, 27, that's just too risky. 3 years is too short. I'm not going to have enough equity. And the seller's not going to budge on 3. So how could we make sense of 3? How could we make this less risky? I'm asking you guys. It won't go longer. 3's it. How do we turn this? How do we get more equity?
You could lower what you take home every month to raise the payment.
Raise the payment so we pay down our balance faster. And there's one more thing, super simple. Increase rent if that's a possibility, but if it's a possibility, that's not really what I'm looking for here, though.
Down payment?
Add value, yes, that is another option, but you know, then we got to put money into it. So that is another great option, but avoiding putting money into it. You guys are going to be like, oh yeah, well duh. It's so obvious. You guys all know this.
Steal it.
You just lower the purchase. You just lower. Look, I could do 3 years, but I got to be at 90,000. I can't do 100. Right. So just think creatively if you end up in these situations where, like, you know, the payment's a hiccup or the balloon's a hiccup. Look to explore how we can maybe tweak these things to get the deal to make sense. That really is it. I mean, this is just like, this is as basic as underwriting can probably get. Without getting, you know, even deeper into this type of stuff. I know this can be complex. So like if this was for any of you guys, if you guys are like, oh man, I don't know about this, that's exactly how I felt. I had to see anybody I've showed this to, including myself, I had to see this a few times for it to stick. And I think that's the case with most people. So if that's you, like, don't be overwhelmed or freaked out. It's totally normal. Any questions, I guess, on any of this, how we formulated this offer?
Not
So,
on that
a
part of it, I don't.
A question is like, so what do you look at? Like, I mean, how do you know what your buyers are looking for when they want to have cash flow? What's the norm? What's the going rate? Like, I've done some where I've come up with, like, you know, only $120, $136 a month cash flow. So, I mean,
Yeah.
does that work?
Not really. I mean, unless it's like a dirt cheap property. The investors that are going to go do a deal, like, yeah, it makes $100 a month, $200 a month. Most of the time, like, they're just complete newbies. And I'd say 90% of the people that buy those deals, it's their first deal. That tends to be those buyers. The seasoned investors, they need at least a couple $100, unless they're not a cash flow investor. That's the other thing to pay attention to too. Some buyers, like Casey here in the Discord, a couple months back, he sold a deal that the guy was losing like $100 or $200 a month, the buyer, and he made sense of that as an investment because of the equity. And then also the tax benefits, being able to depreciate the property. So like, yeah, I'll lose $200 a month if I can write off, you know, a couple $100,000 over the course of a few years, you know. So it depends on the buyer. So I'd say it's the super seasoned people with very deep pockets that'll scoop something up for tax benefits and appreciation. And if it's a cash flow buyer buying something that's $100 a month cash flow, it's going to be a complete newbie. The seasoned guys buying stuff for cash flow, what I find is they want to see at least $300 a month net. At least. So,
I mean, it could be one of those things too, where if, you know, it needs a little bit of work, so you're going to lose money now, but you're going to gain money on the equity side when it comes time to balloon it out.
yeah. Now this is also too a totally different approach, though. I don't know who was just asking that first question, but this is different than analyzing somebody's deal to wholesale it. So this is only if we want to buy the deal, right? Because we plugged in what we want to make and all that. So just keep that in mind. Do you guys want to, or I guess before we move on, any other questions on this? Anybody?
From like a tax perspective, Eric, are you able to like when you do creative deals where you're paying an individual versus paying the bank, are you able to show that on your taxes? Because I guess at the end of the day, you have to think about that. You know, what's it going to cost me to buy this, and what am I going to have to put out to the side to pay taxes? You know, for a personal, you know, business expense.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you're definitely going to be able to show the payment to the seller.
Okay.
You know, real estate is only rental income. That's only going to get taxed around 15%. So I think,
Okay.
that's one of the lowest tax brackets there are. And then if you depreciate the property too, you could eliminate all gains and pay no tax.
Okay.
But I'm no CPA, so strategy there, everybody's case is different.
Well, yeah, I know like taxes and stuff from a different business in which I'm in right now. So I'm just like trying to make sure when I do numbers like this that I'm equating that part of it into, you know, how I proceed forward.
Definitely. All righty. Do you guys want to see a little bit of a different approach and underwrite somebody's actual deal? So, hey, I have a house I want to sell and it's a rental, and then we analyze it.
Yeah, Erica, I have a question, and maybe it kind of leads to what you're talking about right now. So let's just say somebody wants to get rid of their house. You know, they're not interested in receiving payments from you. They just want to walk away from it. It's a bad deal. That would not be seller finance, right? What would that be?
That would just be sub 2. So they just want to walk.
Yeah, they just want to walk and leave the property behind and know that they're not going to be the ones making the payments or responsible for the payments anymore.
Let's go there. There's many different things we could talk about, like many different ways to underwrite, different ways to analyze too. Let's speak on that then. So let's say we came across the seller, purchase price. I want 100,000 and I owe 100,000. I just want to walk away. That's exactly what you're talking about, right, Jose? I think so.
Yes, exactly. That's exactly the scenario. I actually
So-
have one possible right now. That's why I'm asking.
Okay. Yeah. So we just hit, all right, awesome. Yeah. So now what I do is, I never bring up subject to a seller. I really try to avoid it because I think it's just unnecessary to bring up. What I like to do is when I'm dealing with a direct to seller and I'm speaking about creative finance, whatever it is, a hybrid, sub 2, seller finance, always try and speak to them like they're 3 years old. So the simplest thing you could probably say is seller finance. Most people at least heard that term. And then if you have to explain it to like they're a 2-year-old, oh, what's that? Oh, all that means is we agree on the total figure, the 100,000, and then I make payments to you. And that's it. Just keep it as simple as that, even though we know they have no equity, right? We might drop the sub 2 ball on, or we'll bring that up later. We're just not there yet. First, just to give some context with what I'm saying, you first really want to hook them on the idea of what's going down. The idea is you're not going to get all your money. It's not going to be an outright sale. There's going to be some seller finance or, something creative in the mix of some sort. So I want to hook them on that general idea before I break out how the numbers break out. It's going to be seller finance here and equity here, or whatever. Right. So the conversation would be, all right, yeah, seller. So you just want to walk away. Awesome. How much do you owe on the mortgage? 100,000. Okay. So you owe exactly what it's worth. Cool. What's your mortgage payment? Oh, your mortgage payment is $1,200 a month. Awesome. Are the taxes and insurance escrowed in the payment? Escrow just means included in the payment. So are tax and insurance included in that $1,200? Oh yeah, they are. Cool. Great. Let me run some numbers. I'll get back to you. So this is going to be different, right? So the first approach, there was no mortgage. So we were coming up with what can I pay the seller every month? And then how long do I need? Because I'm only taking over a piece of debt, I don't get to determine what the payment is. The payment, it is what it is, right? It's $1,200 a month. I can't go to the bank and say, I can only pay you $8. That's not going to happen. And then as far as the balloon, right? Most loans that we're going to be taking over sub 2, they're going to be FHA or or conventional. There's not going to be a balloon on them. So that means I get to make the payment until the balance is zero. If there's 20 years left on it, I can ride it out the full 20 years. So all we're really doing with this underwriting is seeing what is the cash flow on the deal. So this is even simpler than the first one, actually. So again, that's going to start with the rent. What could the house rent for? Oh, cool. It can rent for $2,000 a month. Sweet. Awesome. And then we just subtract all expenses once again. So expenses being what? We got a mortgage payment now in the mix of $1,200 a month. That's now an expense tied to the property that we got to worry about. So $1,200 a month comes out. We also got to take out tax and insurance, but that's part of the $1,200. So that's it. We got the mortgage payment. We got tax. We got insurance. We got our vacancy, 10%. That's going to be $200. We got our CapEx. Let's say the house is in good shape, 10%. That's going to be another $200. No HOA, no owner meter, no property manager. This is it. I'm going to self-manage, no other expenses. So now when we run this math, this is just going to tell us what the cash flow is. So not what we're paying our seller, but what's left over, right? What's left over for us in our pocket. So let's do the math here. You guys let me know what you got.
400.
400. So this deal makes $400 a month if I take over the mortgage. This is, maybe it seems really simple. There's no stupid questions. So are we all on this page or no? How we analyze this cash flow? Anybody want me to run it back? I'm happy to do that.
Yes, can you run it back, please?
Absolutely. Definitely. So with sub 2, remember, we're taking over the mortgage. So seller's just walking away. They owe what it's worth. They want to sell for 100. They owe 100. So if I buy the house cash, I go to Wells Fargo and get a loan to buy it. It doesn't matter how I buy it. The seller has no equity, so they're walking away with no money. So instead of me getting a loan or reaching in my pocket to buy it for 100 just to pay off their existing loan, let's just leave it in place. Let me just take it over, and seller, you could still walk away. So really all we're doing, what we're trying to see is how much cash flow is there? Does this deal even make money? Right? So we asked them, what's your mortgage payment? Oh, I pay $1,200 a month. Awesome, seller. Are tax and insurance included in the mortgage payment? Yes, they are. If they said no, then list them. All right, how much do you pay for taxes? And then just write them down, right? And so now that we got the mortgage payment, tax, insurance, all we're doing, again, just like the first time, we're just going to run the numbers. So we started with what can it rent for? It can rent for $2,000 a month. We subtract all the expenses here. And then what's left is going to be our profit, what's left over, right? So if I can rent it for $2,000 a month and I could factor in my vacancy of 10%, that's going to be minus 200 coming out, minus another 200 for capital expenditures, minus our mortgage payment of $1,200 a month. That includes the taxes and insurance, and that's all the expenses. So rent minus the expenses, what is left over is ours to keep. And can we make sense of that becomes the question. So that's our cash flow. So that number came out to $400 a month is what's left over. So in essence, if I could rent the house for $2,000 a month, then I could make the mortgage payment of $1,200, put this money away for the vacancy and the capital expenditures, right? Put money away for the rainy day, and I'll be left with $400 a month. So if I could rent it for $2,000, put money away for the rainy day, pay the mortgage, tax, and insurance, then I'm left with $400, and it becomes a question: good deal or bad deal? Do I want to do the deal if I make $400 a month? One more time. If I'm going too quick, just say it. Like, yo, slow it down.
It seems like a good deal, but
Yeah, I'll do that. Why not? It's $100,000 purchase, no money to the seller. Yeah, I'll do that for sure.
Yeah,
Like I said, I'll do
hey,
deals too that, even if this made $100 a month, I still might do it. If I if it's a full balloon, because or I'm sorry, if there's no balloon, right? Because if I'm buying this subject to, I'm going to take over the loan, and that loan, pay it off till it's paid in full. That's fine. I'll do a deal that makes no money today because I have the next 20 years to make money on it. And really what I'm getting at is I know I'll be able to increase rents. It might not be this year, so maybe I break even this year, maybe I break even next year, but the third year I should be able to start increasing rent. And now I'm cash flow. Now I'm making money every single month.
And we're not even discussing any rehab that's being done to these, right?
No. I've rarely put work into properties. Very, very few that have done like actual updates and repairs. My whole play, not to jump topics here, but normally when a property needs a lot of work, I'll just do a rent-own to avoid having to do the work. So, hey, I'll do a rent-own. I want a little bit of a down payment. I'll sell it to you with these terms, but you got to do all the work. And then now I'm cash flowing without having to do any repairs. Somebody else is doing them. That's a whole nother topic. There's so many benefits to wrapping a deal, but maybe we'll later.
So I guess that's where I'm doing it wrong then, because I'm adding rehab value. I guess that's why my numbers are coming up so low.
That's definitely 100%. Especially if you're analyzing them for like a wholesale, that's definitely messing it up.
Yeah, that's the problem, man. I got to redo this shit.
Well, I'm glad we caught it. That's good.
Eric, just a quick question. Using the same example that you use, there's no equity on the home. You take over the payments. You're making $400 cash flow. Now, you own the property now. If in the future, let's say 3, 4, 5 years from then, the house either you somehow force appreciation or it appreciates just through the market going up. Is there any terms of like refinancing the home to take that equity out of it, or how would you go about that then?
Yeah, you could refinance or sell whenever you want to.
Awesome. And the refinance would be, I'm guessing, under your own name, right?
That would. Yep. Unless you could talk a seller into doing that, which is possible.
Yeah, that's crazy. Okay, thanks.
Yep. One thing too, for those of you guys that have been maybe doing this a little bit longer, one thing to keep in mind too is like I've refinanced with my sellers on a few deals. Like, I'll do a 2-year balloon, 2 years is up. Hey, let's refinance. I'll give you an extra 10 on the purchase, extend for another 2 years for me. And I've had quite a few people do that. So just something to keep in mind. All righty. More questions? Anything else? Feeling good? All right. I'll give you guys the option. Do we want to keep going? There's so much to cover in underwriting. So we could either keep going on this, or if you guys want to change gears and cover the listing program, we could do that too.
So with these deals, you're adding the 10% or 20% based on your feel of the property. Does that money cover like updating, like once you get out of a tenant, or are you gonna have to come more out of pocket for that? It's just for like the major stuff.
Yeah, just the major stuff.
Okay.
Yep. You're probably good somewhere around like another 5 to maybe 10% for maintenance, somewhere up in there.
Okay.
Maybe less. Yeah.
So if you're doing these subject twos, are you just hoping the house is not trash, that you're getting other tenants in there, or you're keeping the same tenants in there? Or, I mean, how does that work?
Yeah, I mean, obviously we'll be fully aware of the condition of the property before like actually making a first payment to these people, or like, committing, going through with the deal. So like we're fully aware of the condition of the property. As far as the tenant, if a tenant's already in place, then we honor the lease. We'll just keep that tenant there. If they're not paying, then fine, I'll take over the tenant, I'll get him out, and I'll get my own tenant in. I kind of answered that.
Yeah, you did. And that's, I guess, looking at all my creative offers, the reason why they're mostly getting rejected is because I keep adding rehab in there and it's lowering the payments. So that's where I'm going wrong, because I thought everything had to have the rehab value in there.
Yeah. Yep. No, I'm glad we caught that. Now, one thing to keep in mind for everybody is, so, go back to like the first underwriting style, how we came up with the payment and the balloon and all that good stuff. You're, again, like I said earlier, you're only really going to do that on stuff that you're looking to buy. And then this approach, how we kind of underwrote the single family to see how it performs. So like, all right, we're going to buy it sub 2. Let's see what the cash flow looks like. This kind of approach, and this goes a little deeper if there's equity involved and whatnot, but this type of approach of seeing how the property performs is only going to be done mostly on multis. So keep that in mind. You could do this on duplexes. I'll do stuff like that. But when it comes to small multi up to 4 units, those actually get comped out. So people don't use a cash flow approach. What's the cash flow look like? Right? They don't actually underwrite. 99% of people don't underwrite these small multis. They're going to comp them out, and that's how they'll try and justify a price. So just something to keep in mind there too. Do you guys want to go just one step deeper? It's not too much deeper than what we see here, and then that will be on how to properly underwrite deals that are currently occupied.
I guess for the newer people in here like myself, do you see a lot of people doing like subject to and creative financing with anything bigger than a fourplex, or is it typically single families and like duplexes and stuff like that?
No, people do bigger stuff too all the time.
Okay.
Oh yeah.
Eric, have you spoken about where or how to find these deals? I'm sorry if you did.
No, actually, I didn't touch on that. There's a lot of course videos covering stuff like that. We could talk on that though. We got 30 minutes. Let's do this. I really want to share this last one because I think it's important for you guys to see. This is going to be probably like one of the more common ones too. And then I'll do that too. We can cover quick lead gen. And for those of you guys like Chris and anybody else that's newer to the game, you really don't have to worry about knowing any of this stuff that we're covering on today's Zoom. If I was brand new, my recommendation would be like just hone in on wholesale. You'll make more on the individual deal on the creative finance versus wholesale. But that's going to be like down the road money. Don't think like, all right, yeah, I'm going to go get a creative finance deal and then I'm going to cash out and put $100,000 in my pocket in a couple months. That's not going to happen. So a lot of the creative finance deals, I made way more money on the properties that I bought on creative finance, but only when I sold them down the road. So I'm a year in, 2 years in, 3, 4, 5 years in. I sold them at all different points, but it was those deals always made me the most amount of money, like cashed out for 60, cashed out for 100, like stuff like that, big money. But it's going to be down the road. It's not going to be today or tomorrow. So if the goal, you got to really think about what your guys' goals are. If the goal is to like get into the real estate game full time, I want to get out of the 9 to 5. It's not going to be creative finance that does it. Wholesale is going to do that the fastest for you. If you could do 3 deals a month at $10,000 a pop, well, now you got 30 G's a month coming in. Now you could definitely get out of the job, and then you could start building the portfolio too. But if you're only focused, and I'm kind of saying this from experience of what I've seen in this group. Like we've had this group rolling for 2+ years, 2.5 years. And I used to pitch a lot of the creative finance on like the TikTok lives. Like that's really all we talked about, not a lot of wholesale. And so most of the people in the group, they would join like, yeah, I want to get a house. I want to start building a portfolio. And then it would just like, it would take too long. Like, all right, yeah, it took 3 months to get my first home. Or maybe I'm getting a house every other month. I'm able to scoop one up. But, 5 homes isn't going to get you out of the job. 10 homes probably isn't going to get you out of the job to be able to, replace that income unless it's high income producing property. So the fastest thing is going to be the wholesale. And so if that's the goal, focus just on wholesale and then just try and learn this as time goes on. So, hey, I'm focused on the wholesale, focus on doing those types of deals, but I'm going to keep showing up to Eric Zooms and listen to this type of stuff. And then what's going to happen is little by little, you'll pick it up, start coming together more and more. You'll start pitching it. And then now you're doing both. You've been out of the 9 to 5, you got active income from wholesale, and then you're working on the passive income from the rental properties. Right. So just want to throw that out there. Brian in the chat, are you still going to group people up? let's actually do that now. We'll do this, guys, on our next Zoom. So Thursday Zoom with me. We'll continue with this underwriting. So we'll just do the last one. We'll do the listing program, and then we'll do deal help Thursday. That'll be the plan. Let's wrap up. We got a little bit of time, so let's squad you guys up that want accountability partners, and then we could wrap up with some questions if you guys got stuff. If you guys haven't been hearing me speak on TikTok about the whole accountability piece, really what I said was, the best thing you guys could do, I've said this on repeat here, is partner up, like work with somebody so you can grow a lot faster. And it just forces you to work. I'm not going to give you guys a whole spiel, but it's so easy to get lazy in this game of like, especially when you're working on your own for the first time, like, I don't want to make the calls this weekend. I'd rather chill on the couch because I had a long week, or, I don't want to have to do an hour at night because I just worked a whole day. But when you have somebody expecting you to show up to a Zoom, it's going to kind of force you, hopefully, to show up like, man, Mike's waiting for me. I don't want to do it, but screw it. All right, I'll just do it. I don't want to look bad to him. Whatever the case is, it'll force you to put in the work. So a lot of benefits to that. So what we'll do right now, I'll partner you guys up. Let's do this. Should have maybe gave this a little thought. Let me think about this 1 second. Best way to do this. All right, put a 1 in the chat if you could only do weekends. That's the only availability you have. So 1 in the chat if you could only do weekends. Put a 2 in the chat if you could do after work. So after, say, 5 p.m. EST, you have at least 1 day a week, if not more, to do maybe an hour worth of work. Most of you guys are 2s. Cool. And then I guess 3, if you have like a lot of time, you're like, yo, I'm jobless. I can go all day at this, or almost all day at this. So 1, if you could only do weekends. 2, if you could do after work. And 3, if you have nothing but time. All right, cool. All right, let's do. Now, I guess, let me ask you, how would you guys prefer to connect with one another? Cell phones or Discord DMs? Any preference? Cell phone? I think cell phone's probably easier too. All right, we should have did this from the jump. All right, so you're going to everybody repost your number, but also in that same message, put your cell phone. If you're not comfortable with cell phone, put your Discord name. So put your number and your cell or Discord name. And then what you guys could do is see who lines up. If I'm a 2, let me get all the cell phones from all the other 2s and hit them up and just see who you vibe with. Like, yo, saw your info, connected with you. When are you free? What's your goal? Like, and that's it, right? So just drop your number with the cell like Jason did, or Discord name. And then you guys get all that contact info and see. And for those of you guys, like maybe you're a 2, right? So you're like, yo, I can only do nights, but maybe you could also do weekends so you can connect with a weekend person. So maybe I partner up with somebody that can only do weekdays, and then I jump with Mark on Saturdays for an hour, whatever. So you guys all have each other's cell phones. It's all up in there. Again, just drop your number and phone number, right? So you 1, 2, or 3 with cell or Discord. And just connect. I would just connect with you guys, and I don't see there being a point of like a rule to it, right? So if you want 4 people on a Zoom, that's cool too. That'll just hold you guys more to it. Be able to ask each other questions, push each other to do the work, and make it a little competitive too. Nice, cool. My recommendation would be either Zoom, so like hop on a Zoom call privately, or Google Meet. I think that's free, and you could have like any amount of people, no time limitations on there. Cool. All right. Any questions, I guess? This could be any general questions you guys got at this point. You feeling good?
I had a question for the sub 2 deals when you make a deal, is the owner the person making the deal, or are they still the owner of the?
Like, do they stay on the deed?
Yeah.
So that's going to be optional. Let's talk on that just for a minute, and then we'll cover lead gen real quick. So, how do I want to dive into this? So you kind of have two options, right? So you could either take the deed or you could do what's called an agreement for deed. Depending on the state, the whole agreement for deed piece, they might use different verbiage, right? So like in Michigan, they call it a land sale contract. In Texas, or I think Arizona, they call it like an executory. It's basically the same thing. So all that means is the owner has the deed still, but we have full possession of the property. So regardless how we structure the deal, we have full possession, and it just becomes an option. Do I want the deed or not? Right. Now, I guess let's dive into this a little bit. If you close the deal, then you have to factor in closing costs. That now becomes an expense. So that's going to be a couple $100 right there. Maybe a little over $1,000 depending on the property and what's involved with that. So if you close on the property, you got closing costs. Now, the other thing when you do a subject to, if you close on the deal, you are somewhat exposing yourself to the due on sale clause in the mortgage. The due on sale, that's a clause in every single mortgage. And all that means is if the deed transfers, the bank can call all the money due. So, Chris, we saw you transfer the deed to Jose. We want all the money that you owe us, right? So you do open up the exposure for that. The due on sale, that rarely happens. That's a whole nother discussion. If we got time, maybe we could talk on that. But don't let that scare you out of it. That just becomes a possibility. I'll say this on that. If that were to happen, then you just pivot the deal back into an agreement for deed and you're smooth sailing again. So not a whole lot of risk. If really any, there's no risk at all. The only risk is you might just have to put the deed back in the seller's name. That's the extent of risk with sub 2. But you got the option. You could either close on it or not. So again, if you close on it, you got the closing cost. If you don't close on it, then you could avoid the closing cost. There would be none. Most of the deals I've done, especially when I was brand new, I didn't have any money, so I had to go the agreement for deed route, and that's really all I knew at that time too. And so I was just pitching agreement for deed. The moment they signed it, it's now my house. I can do whatever I want, which was super cool. Looking back, what I like about the agreement for deed is it's like almost somewhat a layer of protection, like to a degree, because if I default on the payment, now I don't have this person getting an attorney involved trying to foreclose on me or come after me. If I default on the agreement for deed, we could just tear it up and go our separate ways. Like, all right, no harm, no foul. Like, sorry, So now I've got a foreclosure on my record, or just the risk of somebody coming after me, maybe personally too. So the nice part about the agreement for deed is that, you kind of mitigate your liability. Or what happens if the tenant stop paying and now you can't pay your seller because you got no money, right? You're like, I'm trying to do this with no money out of pocket. I got no money in savings. I'm going to throw a Hail Mary and hope everything goes smooth. But say, I'm a couple of months into the deal, the tenant was paying and then they stop. And I'm like, crap. Well, you still owe that mortgage payment to the seller. So like, what if now it's another 3 months because I got to evict the person or whatever. Now it's like 6 months I'm not paying. Now the seller's like, bro, like I'm foreclosing on you. I'm coming after you. I'm calling it due. Well, now you're in a jam, right? So if stuff like that happens and it's structured as an agreement for deed, if I stop paying the seller, we tear our agreement up, we go our separate ways. That's our default clause. So you set yourself up for protection. Now, the only there's so much I could say on these topics. Where should we go? Let's see. I'll say, all right, so now one of the only benefits really to having the deed is if you plan to depreciate the property, or you plan to update the property and refinance it. That's really it. So if you don't plan to go in there and update it and refi, and you don't plan to I'm losing my train of thought. Refi, what was the other one I just said? Jeez. depreciate. If you don't plan to refi or depreciate, then there's no point of having the deed at all. So you might as well just structure it as an agreement for deed, completely eliminate the risk of the due on sale, and just go on, move on, run the deal like that. So that's kind of my 2 cents on agreement for deed versus giving them or closing on it. Any other questions, I guess, there?
I guess in that case, I guess say we get, there's 20 years left on the mortgage and you get 5 in and you're like, I want to renovate and refinance, get some money out of it. And it's, you did the agreement to deed. Can you go back to the seller and be like, hey, I'd like to restructure it. I'd like to close it, get the deed. Is that something that's possible? Just renegotiate?
Well, all right. So a couple things I could say here. So say exactly what you're saying. Seller still has the deed. I want to go in, renovate, refi. I could still go in and renovate the property, but instead of me refinancing the property, because I don't have the deed, it would be me getting a loan to buy the property, if that makes sense.
Okay.
But let me keep going here. So with what you're also saying, you could transfer the deed whenever you want to. That's the other thing to keep in mind. That's how our agreements are set up. So I'm gonna get full possession now today. The deed's gonna stay in John Smith's name, but whenever Eric Schmidt decides to transfer the deed, he can. And you can word it that when the deed transfers, the balance is paid in full, or the deed transfers and a note is drafted up and the payments remain in place. The deal remains in place. So
Okay.
like there's
Multiple ways to play it.
limitless possibilities, really. There's no rule.
Okay.
It's whatever we can come up with can be done, really. That's kind of the
Okay.
cool part. Yeah. All right. Any other questions you guys got?
I don't know if you said this already. I got disconnected for a second. What about if the person passes away? What happened then?
Yeah, that's another great question. So if they pass away and they have a will in place, this is where agreement, it could potentially get funny. There's many ways to structure these deals, but the way I used to do it, deed stays in the seller's name, right? And so if the seller were to pass, if they don't have a will in place, then they would have to go through probate before I could actually sell that deal, if that makes sense. So that deed's in the seller's name. The seller just passed away. So now the heirs would acquire that property, right? And if there's a will in place, then boom, they automatically acquire the property. If there's no will, then they got to go through probate. That could be a year plus through the courts, and the courts will determine who gets, which heirs get the property, if that makes sense. And then once that's established, and that deed is transferred to the heirs at that point, whether it was through the will or probate. Once the heirs have the deed, now I could actually sell the house and transfer the deed to myself. So I could either list it, cash out completely. I can refi. I can cash them out, whatever. So that could be the only snag. Now the loophole. 90% of people, 99% of people, no clue about this one. But what you could do, and what I would recommend doing, is have the owner sign a deed over to you, but don't record it. So for those of you guys not aware, a deed is a piece of paper. You can go buy a deed at Office Depot. I think Walmart might even sell them. I bought deeds on Amazon. It's freaking $10 for a whole packet of them. So it's just a piece of paper. So the seller could sign the deed. So they signed ownership over to you, but it only becomes official when you record that. Right. So we just don't record it. If they were to pass, then we record the deed. And that avoids all of that probate issue, that delay, if you will. Now, does that all make sense? Or anybody have any further questions on that before we keep going? No? All right, cool. Or Chris, you got something?
So I guess with that scenario, because say you're doing it subject to, there's still a contract between you and the seller that you're buying the property, correct?
Yes. Yep.
So is there a way, or is it structured within the contract so the family can't come in and basically swoop the property off of you after all this stuff that you've done?
Yeah, all right, so this is where I was actually about to go. So protecting your interest in the deal when you do an agreement for deed. So you're going to file what's called a memorandum. That's in the purchase contract channel in the Discord. You can download that. Very simple.
Okay.
There's course videos in the original course on how to fill that out. And what that does is you're putting a lien against the property. So what that ultimately does is prevent the seller from trying to refinance the house, so they can't secure any debt against it, because now you're holding a lien position against the property. You have a lien against the house, and they can't go sell the house. If they went, I've been in this situation, put a lien on somebody's house, they try to sell it behind my back, and then I get a call from the title company. Hey, is this Eric Schmidt? Yeah. We see you got a lien on their house. How much is the lien so we can remove it? I'm like, I want 40 grand. I'll take it off. And, so it protects your interest. They can't go sell it behind your back because you got that lien there. So every single time you'll do that. Now, let me say this. A lot is coming to mind now. So with the agreement for deed, this is where it could get ugly. Excuse me. If you went the route of not having them sign the deed, then they couldn't refuse to sell, and now I got to take the person to court to force them to sell the property. Do you understand that too? So that just points to the importance of having them sign a deed and you not recording it. Because if they get funny, oh, I'm not signing these closing docs, well, whatever, things could happen. Well, if you have that deed, all right, well, I don't need your signature. It's already signed, done. So just keep that in mind too. If you don't have that is where it can maybe get funny. Any questions at all? Any other questions?
Seller finance, though, the deed stays with the seller until the balloon payment, correct?
Well, that's what's optional. So you could take the deed and then just an actual mortgage note gets recorded and you have full ownership. They're just the lender. But it's optional, So
Got it. Yeah. So they're the bank. So there is no due on sale clause because they own the property. Gotcha.
Yep. Good question. JD, I know you wanted to cover lead gen. I'd rather not try and jam it in these next couple minutes here. Let's do that Thursday, and more is coming to mind. There's probably a lot I can cover on lead gen for creative finance deals.
No problem, man. Thanks, Eric. I'll see you Thursday.
Sweet. Cool. Any other questions, I guess, before we wrap things up? Are we feeling good? Yeah.
I'm feeling good. I learned a lot.
Cool. If you guys didn't hear me in the beginning of Zoom, Friday, my team's going to be giving you guys updates on leads that you sent through the partnership program. A lot of you guys are freaking killing it. I mean, just leads that you guys are sending in are hot, either have converted or very close to converting. So Friday, just look out for a text and you guys will all see the updates there.
Question before you go. Before I actually get my first deal situated and everything like that, do you recommend I get an LLC?
No.
Okay.
I would just do it in your name. Do the first maybe 1 to 3, and then once you're yo, I definitely want to do this for real, full time. Then I would get that going.
Okay.
Yep.
I appreciate it.
Yeah, for sure. And whenever you guys are ready to open an LLC, I got a great company to do it, real cheap and just solid people. So
Awesome.
I'm actually curious about the LLC because I've been thinking about it because I've been hearing about wholesaling for a long time, but right now I've been trying to do Uber just to go straight at only wholesaling because I'm really tired of the same situation, man. So I just want to go for the LLC if possible. If you have the recommendation.
yeah, I'm gonna pull it up right now. I think the one I went with was the $150 package that they got. Links in the chat for you guys. What's really cool about Wyoming is they offer, the state, they have anonymity. And so basically with this company, people can't see in Wyoming who owns LLCs. They can only see the registered agent. And so with this company, they assign a registered agent to your LLC. So like if you were to look up, if you make an LLC with these people and they look up your LLC, say mine, right? A1 Assets, it's going to show A1 Assets, but it's going to have the Wyoming address, so not my address, and it's not going to have my name. It's going to have some lady's name that's the agent for that LLC. And then if people mail the company, send mail to your LLC, it's forwarded over to you, you know, so there's no issue there. But it's really great. You know, you stay anonymous. And I think they do like all the filing for you too with the BOI and all that crap. So it's pretty solid.
So for that one, we don't actually have to have like a office address or anything like that. They'll just like,
You'll give them like your address. I think you put that in. But when somebody looks up the company, it shows their address and their name behind it, not yours. Yep. All righty. Any other questions you guys got?
Eric, I know somebody posted in the chat about doing creative finance or sub 2 in the partnership program.
Say that one more time.
Somebody posted in the chat about sending creative finance or sub 2 in the partnership program.
Let me see. In the chat here?
Yeah.
Oh, Dom. All right. Yeah. Are we allowed to send?
Yeah,
some-
Dom.
Yeah. Are you allowed? Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Definitely. Yeah. Some of you guys have sent some crazy sub 2s, like just free homes, which is nuts. So absolutely, for sure. I saw somebody earlier asking about like videos of me calling to listen to. Yeah, there's not a whole lot on that YouTube channel I got. If you go to the original course though, and you go down to the Zoom recordings, you could probably find at least 1 or 2 videos, like 2-hour sessions of me just calling. We've been, for those of you guys that are like relatively new to the group, at least like a month in, it's been like a lot of topics. We've been covering a lot of topics on the Zooms with me. So probably after next week, we'll probably be back to normal and do just a lot of deal help. And you'll just be able to listen to a lot of phone calls that I'm making for you guys. So, yep. All right. Any other questions? Feeling good? All right, cool, guys. One other thing I guess came to mind before we wrap it up. If anybody's interested in joining the team's been growing really, really fast. Another way, you know, for those you guys, this is a full-time position just to throw out there. But this is a great way for the accountability piece. I think almost everybody on the team started in the community, right? So almost everybody in the company started here with wholesale. And they all love it, you know, with the benefit, not to sell you guys on it, but really the benefit is kind of like the accountability piece. Like you're forced to show up and work, but then you also have the support, right? So I'm with you throughout the day. I'm training you throughout the week, every single day throughout the week. I'm training you in the morning, all that. So it's collapsing the timeline to learn this stuff too. So just want to throw that out there. If any of you guys are interested in that, I'll put the link here in the chat too.
That in person or is that remote?
All on Zoom, which is really cool. So
Okay.
it's work from home.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
And you know what I normally tell people too is I don't expect anybody to be in our company forever. I don't think that's realistic with any business. You know, so a lot of the people that join our team, it's hey, I've done maybe a few deals or I'm chasing the first deal, and I tell them, you know, the expectation could just be hey, you know, I want to do this for maybe 6 months or I want to do it for maybe a year to crunch that timeline, and there ain't gonna be like oh he's leaving us like yo what's going on dude. You know what I mean? Like I'd be happy to see you break out on your own and see you successful on your own too. So keep that in mind. Like this doesn't have to be a forever thing. It could be even a couple months and speed up the process with the knowledge and put money in your pocket. The thing too, like, you know, look at Blaze. A lot of you guys know Blaze. He was doing this on his own for a while. First month, $60,000 is what he pulled in. Crazy. Pocketed 20 G's just off of over 20 G's just off of that one deal. And he was doing this on his own for over a year. Never seen that money. Same thing with Melody. Over a year trying, or 4 months, I think, something like that, trying to do it on her own. And she closed 20,000 first week. She secured that deal, check in hand, within the first 30 days of joining the team. So there's a lot of power behind the support and just all that stuff, really being given leads instead of you guys just hunting leads all day. So
How many days do you ask for people to work on there?
we're on there Monday through Friday. And that is from 10 Central to 6 Central. So 9 to 5 EST, Monday through Friday. While I'm pulling this up, anybody, I guess, have any other questions on that? Any other questions in general? All feeling good? All righty. All right, links there in the chat if any of you guys are interested. You guys will see testing on there. Don't sweat it. You know, even if you have no experience, we're still willing to give you guys a shot. So cool. All right, guys, I'm going to wrap it at that. You guys have Zoom with Terrell tomorrow, I think at 10 a.m., right? And then I'll be back with you guys on Thursday. So have a good Zoom with him, and I'll talk to you guys then.
Have a good night, Eric.
See you
Good
guys.
night.